Sandy, if you're on, this is John Crimmins. I've had to call in because my computer is at work is not liking the Google Meets page.
No worries, totally fine. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Excellent. All right, and I'm just gonna check real quick, John, to see who is on. Get the different view. Okay, Al, Courtney, Catherine, Rachel, and Travis. I'm just gonna give Pedro and Liz an extra minute or two here, if you guys don't mind starting in a few minutes.
Sure.
Thank you. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited that we're going to get 62 degrees on Friday.
Watching those snowbanks, decrease inch by inch is just fantastic.
Very nice. I got a little bit of water in my basement, but otherwise it's okay.
Do you have a pump in the basement, or did it fail?
No, we don't typically need a sub pump for our house. It's more the bulkhead. I haven't sealed that up well enough.
Oh,
yeah. Seeping through that way.
Yeah.
So it's not a ton, but it's definitely, and I need new gutters on the back. I'll admit.
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
Those out too. Those are horrible. I noticed those the other day. I was like, it's like it's creeping out now. You know, the leaves, like you can't hide it. You can really see it.
Yeah, and getting up to get those cleaned out is just a lot of fun.
Totally. And we just painted the house this past like spring, fall.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like, that's a ton of work. So we were just kind of like done come the end of fall. I didn't want to do anything else on ladders. And I'm a super scaredy cat when it comes to heights. So I'm not getting up too far. All right.
So who do we have currently on the call?
So right now we have Al, Courtney, Catherine, Rachel, and Travis, and myself.
Okay, great.
So if you want to start, feel free to go ahead and we can do that.
Okay. So good morning. It is 11:04 according to my clock here. We'll go ahead and get started. A couple of things. I don't think there's any introductions that are needed. We all, I think, at this point know each other. Excuse me. We last night, Sandy was at the county commissioners meeting. I was there as well to listen to the first reading of the recommendations that we had made last week. The county commissioners had a number of questions that really went to the heart of how we made our decisions and what we discussed and why. There were a couple of suggestions that Jim Gailey, the county manager, has made that were also discussed at the meeting, and I'll let Sandy add anything if any comments that she has or any thoughts on what was discussed. So Sandy, if you have anything, go ahead and you can share that.
Thank you, John. I would just like to thank John for being at the meeting last night and conducting yourself as well as you did. You did an amazing job with some of the questions that the commissioners asked of you. They were definitely throwing you some hard balls, and you just knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. So I appreciate your feedback and your thoughtful responses to all of their questions that they asked. I thought you answered them very well and adequately represented the committee too.
Thank you. The biggest question in my mind I had, if you looked at some of the information that Sandy had sent out, the county manager had suggested that the Preble Street program, the food security hub, we had suggested $2.5 million. He had knocked it down to $1.5 million. I think his rationale was that Purple Street had a number of other funding resources that they could utilize, and requests that they have placed. And I think during the discussion, I tried to give as good an accounting of first our skepticism may be a little too strong a word, but our look at the initial application, and then the presentation that Mark Swan had given, and his team, and then why we decided to up that amount to the full $2.5 million that they had requested. I don't know if the county commissioners were swayed at all in that argument. They did seem to believe that Purple Street is a large organization that has access to a lot of different funding mechanisms, and so it was. I'm not sure I was able to sway the commissioners, but I think we gave as good an accounting of why we chose that as possible. There were a couple other things that the county commissioners had given some guidance, and quite frankly, I didn't remember the guidance that they had provided in this particular case. But one of the recommendations was to not fund the main pretrial services at all. So that was a $175,000 reduction, and then there was one other one that I believe. The Quality Housing Coalition, the Growing Project Home, they decided to, or the manager suggested $30,000 as opposed to $150,870. So all told, I believe there's about $1.5 million that were removed from the funding that we had suggested. But of course, this has to go to a second reading, and then the commissioners will finally make a determination. There was some discussion about the second bundle of money, or the second tranche of money that will be coming out, and the application process. And Sandy talked a little bit about the application, what information was there, and I think just gave it a generally a good overview of the process we've taken on, and the number of meetings we've had to discuss where money should go and how it should be spent. So all in all, I think we did a great job, and the commissioners thanked us for all the hard work that we've had over the last month and a half to get to where we are. So look forward to their final reading, and then moving on to the second set of meetings. Anything else we should add, Sandy?
No, I think that sums it up very well. I think that in terms of guidance, I think we answered a lot of those questions that they had in the moment, and a lot of it was just kind of going back to and reminding them of the scoring process we went through and what we looked at. So that we did look at other funding sources and made sure they were aware of that. Because of course, from their perspective, I'm sure they're really concerned. They know this is one-time funding. They're not going to have this large pot of money in the future. And I think they're always thinking about that and making sure we're also considering that aspect as well. So rightfully so, I think they're can be a little nerve-wracking for sure.
Sure.
From their perspective, but yeah.
Okay. Sandy, I will turn it over to you for first of all, any questions or anything from the committee about the presentation or the first reading? No? Okay. I'll turn it over to you to discuss the DIEA and outline next steps.
Yeah, so we had talked about just looking at just having an open discussion about what our next steps will be. And Pedro, who's not on the call today, had talked about the current DEIA practices. And everyone, I think, in general, looked at there was a consensus among committee members that there are some people that have great practices in place already, and others that it's severely lacking, and that we wanted to not me, but the committee wanted to attach kind of some more stipulations with the funding that are related to those DEIA policies. And I just wanted to talk that out with the committee members and gain your feedback, and if you have any directions for me and what you want me to kind of look into and steer me towards in terms of what you are looking for and what you want me to put within the contracts. I can talk a little bit about what will be required of applicants, kind of what the Treasury requires of them. But you might want to have more within the contract that we have the awardee signed to.
Anyone have any comments or questions?
Well, I guess I wonder if there's a way, you know, whether it's written into this contract or for sure, sort of like next time in terms of questions that we ask. I mean, I do think there are some ways in which is there a way that we could write in, sorry, I'm not like totally forming these thoughts correctly, but I'm wondering about if there's a way we can have them doing continuous improvement in which they're asking, you know, making sure that they are asking those who are going to be most impacted by their project for their feedback. You know, I mean, good DE&I practices are around engagement. They're around having folks, you know, joining in on your board and really being advisors in the projects that you're doing, not just the recipients of the project. So I wonder if there's, and I don't know how that gets built into the actual contracts. So you know, we could think through that more, but I'm thinking that that might be helpful to have like, sorry, now I'm looking at your.
So I thought I would share what the current programmatic data requirements are for existing awardees. So anyone that's going to receive the funds regarding promoting equitable outcomes. So Treasury requires that we ask these particular questions and that we get feedback. So on the screen right now, one of the questions is always going to be, you know, the population you're serving and the beneficiary income information related to that. So we're collecting income information, race and ethnicity, and demographic distribution is really more along that lines of where do they fit? Are they disproportionately impacted or impacted? Do they live in a qualified census tract, gaining traction there in terms of the population being served? And then in terms of promoting equitable outcomes, this is what's been outlined for us. So goals, are there particular historically underserved, marginalized, or adversely affected groups that are you intending to serve within your jurisdiction? Awareness, how equal and practical is the ability for residents or businesses to become aware of services you are providing that are funded by ARPA? Access and distribution, are there different levels of access to benefits and service groups across service groups? Are there administrative requirements that result in disparities in inability to complete applications or meet eligibility criteria? And outcomes, are intended outcomes focused on closing gaps, reaching universal levels of service, or a desegregating process by race and ethnicity? Which is a lot. Oops, sorry. I need to not share that anymore. So that's what's currently going to be required of folks. So it kind of touches a little bit, I think, Liz, on that community feedback sort of. I think we could potentially gain traction with some of those already kind of preset questions. But the other component, I think, is maybe how do we ensure that, you know, folks are actually utilizing those practices, I think might be another area to look at and try to hone in on a bit, so that it's not just this one and done. It's not just a sheet of paper you throw out there and you wrote, but you're actively using every day and participating with. And that's where I need kind of some guidance and feedback too. Rachel, yeah. Do you guys? Okay, good.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'd be interested in seeing is how an organization trains its staff to meet these goals and to achieve equity. As you said, doesn't help if you just pass out something and walk away. Yep. But if you hold a staff meeting and talk about it and and people become accountable for at least documenting this process and their efforts. That would be helpful. The other thing that I know the government is interested in this information in terms of the groups being served. I would have a question about how the organization has internal processes to ensure equitable hiring process, promotion process. And that would also go to the board. How is a board member recruited? Are people eligible? Is there a reach out process to bring people in? In other words, look at both how an organization operates and the effect it has on the population it works with.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Those are good ones.
Catherine?
I apologize. If someone does have a comment, just go ahead and speak up because I don't see anyone on a screen. I'm not on the meet.
Sorry, John. And of course I should be. You're flying blind. I apologize. I don't.
Catherine, you're on mute.
I am, yeah, sorry about that. I had to switch screens. I'm on my laptop now. Perhaps we could sort of mimic the Davis-Bacon compliance and maybe do something like create some interview questions. You know, you could maybe do a sample of internal people and then maybe people who are benefiting from the program. Something brief, just a brief survey, just to kind of gauge how well the applicant is actually following through.
So like employee interviews and direct recipient interviews.
Yeah. External and internal stakeholders.
Can I just ask, would that require something of you, Sandy? I mean, because there's a part of me that's like, this should be just what they do. Like, I want it to be on them to do this stuff and not necessarily, I mean, yes, of course, we might have to ask them for you know, the documentation that they did that. But there's a part of me that's like, this should be what they do if they're getting the funding. And so is there a way that we can put it on them to say, here are the things that we want to see you doing over the next few years with this funding, like to make sure that you're doing these things. And here they are, and you are going to have to then provide us with this information to show us that that's happening. Like all the things that Rachel said seem like things they can do on their own, and then they should be able to show you what they're doing.
Yep, I can make it part of the same programmatic data that we collect quarterly. And maybe even make some of these, I don't know if quarterly would be too much, if you guys think it's too much, or, you know, initially talk about the board and then quarterly thereafter, if there are any like changes as a result of, you know, us asking these requests, you know, have they made changes? Did they come up, show any kind of like data that says, well, we noticed this at the beginning and then, you know, at the end of our project, we decided to do this or that. These are the outcomes related to, you know, assessing our board or looking at our internal practices. So we could build outcomes and measures from that. I think that would be a good idea and I agree with you, putting it on them. And I like Catherine's idea of the employee interviews, because that could just be supportive documentation for those internal DEI processes. I think that's a good way to collect it and ask for it.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I just threw that out because just what Pedro said last time about how a lot of people were just using boilerplate language. And so how do you really confirm that they're actually following through on what they're saying?
Yep. And that might mean just me doing a follow-up interview with that person too. I agree with you there, like versus leaving it up. So like, I think that in itself needs to be sort of go in and interview somebody, right? So you're getting like the full real scope versus someone kind of could potentially change that data a little bit or skew it.
Right. And our organization, we're doing a diversity, equity, and inclusion training at the end of the month. And we're fortunate that we have the funds and we have, a manager who is putting aside time during the day for all of us to attend that training. But maybe other organizations aren't so lucky. Maybe they don't have the funds or the time to dedicate to that type of training.
That is a really good point, and whether or not, as a committee, we could certainly recommend to the commissioners, possibly having a fund set aside for that kind of technical assistance to build some of these policies and help bridge that gap where there might be inadequacies. Rachel?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same line that some organizations have piles of money and they can get stuff done. There are a lot of them out there that may not know kind of where to start. So if there's a way that Cumberland County could offer a training or offer guidelines on how to get training or offer guidelines on how to develop a good policy, that then they can't say, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't have enough money to do something.
Yep.
Or we didn't know, or we didn't know who we could ask. But be proactive in that area. And then if they don't follow up, then hold them accountable.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point too, in terms of holding accountable, right? And setting those kind of milestones and measures as a requirement to receive those funding invoices, right? To pay them down essentially. And if someone's not complying with it, which would be more of like a contractual agreement to term that you have to meet these benchmarks of equity. Sorry, just thinking out loud. Benchmarks.
Any other comments? This has been a great discussion. So not hearing any more comments. I think, Pedro had some good ideas about, or some good comments in the when we talked about this last. I'd like to hold this item over to get his perspective, maybe at a follow-on meeting, if that's okay with everyone here.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. So we'll hold that off. We'll hold off any decisions or any further ideas until perhaps Pedro can have some comments and then have some thoughts be known. Moving into public comment, is there anyone, Sandy, that's on the meeting that's not part of the committee or staff?
Nope, I don't see
Nope.
it.
Okay. So seeing no public comment, we'll move on. Is there any other business that the committee wants to bring forward?
Not
No?
seeing anything, no.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what to do. This is I think this is the fastest meeting we've had. Is there anything else that people want to discuss before we seek a motion to adjourn?
No, I think we're good
No?
for today.
Anyone like to make a motion?
So move that we adjourn.
Any seconds?
Second.
All right. All in favor? I can't see anyone, but I assume it's unanimous.
We see hands up all over the place.
Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you for interpreting that, Rachel. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to the meeting today. Greatly appreciated, as is all of the hard work that's been done. And I did want to mention at the very beginning, when we met with the county commissioners, they thanked us for for the many meetings, the many hours of work that went into not only reviewing all the applications, but then having the meeting with the applicants and making our recommendations. It was greatly appreciated by the commission. So thank you very much, and thank you, Sandy and the staff, and we'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time. Thanks, John.
Yep, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.